Hello. Uh, Today we're talking about soulmates, and I guess that's a thing. People, I wanted to do something about relationships. I think last week I wanted to do that, but I didn't because I had something else on my mind, and that's been on my mind this week. But I was like, wait a minute, I've already done a video on that. What do now? Soulmates. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about you know, twin flames and, when you're with somebody forever. And people have all sorts of different opinions on this, religious opinions, just romantic opinions in general. And then there's the lonely single people who just, say stuff that they don't really mean just because they don't want to acknowledge that they're single. And that's a whole thing, but I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I think we can all acknowledge that people do that. Um, but we're just talking about it today, and I'm going to tell you what I've learned about it and explain it in the way that I understand it because that's a good idea. So, as usual, I have an outline written, and you can follow along as I read it because it's in the description. Every week it will be in the description. And I have it in front of me. So I'm going to begin reading, and then I'll go back and I'll explain anything that needs explaining. And we'll see if I can do it faster than the previous episodes have been quite long, and I think unnecessarily. Many people think of a soulmate as a lifelong partner, but God is the only being that's always with you. You can call it spirit or the universe, but it will always be both within you and all around you. Everything and everyone else is only with you temporarily, but that doesn't mean you'll always be alone. Time is an illusion. The trick is to be grateful for and focused on the present. You're always surrounded by love and support if you choose to see it, and even though it doesn't always look the same, it is always there. A soulmate is someone who you have opportunities to learn and grow with. Whether for a short time or a long time, your paths have intertwined, and that's something to be grateful for. The other person has as much free will as you, though, so they won't always make the best decisions to learn and grow. Don't be afraid to acknowledge when you've outgrown your partner, or when they've outgrown you. You're whole on your own. You don't need anyone to complete you, and you don't need to force a relationship to last longer just because your paths intertwined at one point. I think that really speaks for itself, but the parts that I want to elaborate on are about the universe and God and everything, because, well, think about when you have faith in some type of higher power versus when you believe that everything is random and meaningless and nothing matters. When you believe that, you really kind of feel alone, and then there are times when you feel like that's not enough. Like you can't always take care of yourself, and you're kind of in over your head. Because really you are. I mean, you come into this world you know nothing about. You don't know what you're made of or what you even are. You can't even really technically prove that you exist because there are theories out there that suggest humans are basically just complex robots, nature-made robots. And in that sense, consciousness is sort of a trick of the mind. It's an illusion. And your soul doesn't really exist. It's just sort of, you know, the functions of your body, and when you die, it's when those functions stop. You're no longer functioning. Your brain doesn't work. Your heart stops. Whatever it is, you're clinically dead. And all those stories about people having near-death experiences where they see their soul floating away, stuff like that. People just come up with scientific explanations for that based on what the mind shows you. So there are, you come into the world and people can say, oh, well, then that means that nothing, that there's like, there is no higher power and there's no souls or anything. People will hear that and that's the conclusion that they'll draw. But I say you should draw a different conclusion from that, because the conclusion that I would draw is that you don't know anything. All that really means is that nothing is certain. You've come into a world that you know nothing about. You don't even know what you are. You don't even know if you exist or if you're just an illusion created by your brain. You don't know if anything is real. You don't know what anything is. That's the one thing that's for sure, is you don't know what it is. All you know is that wherever you go, there you are. So whatever you are, wherever you are, you're here. And of course, you're going to feel very overwhelmed and like you're in over your head if you're trying to take on this infinite universe that you really don't know anything about, um, without any support from the universe. Just doing it as if you're separate from it. And when you acknowledge that you're connected to everything and that everything is part of you, it feels less overwhelming because you're able to understand that you're not just here thrown into this chaotic, meaningless place on your own that you know nothing about, but that you're part of some bigger system and you're connected to it. And I think that's kind of objectively true, in the same way that you could think of a big piece of fabric. You're just part of that fabric. It's not that, you know, it's it's all connected. The water in a bottle is still from the bigger body of water. You know what I mean? Like it's not separate, and it's it's crazy that people don't understand. You really, I mean, you literally can't go outside of the universe and view it from a distant perspective. You can't zoom out. You're always going to be within the universe. Like I said, wherever you go, there you are. So you're never really going to be alone. But that's something that a lot of people don't seem to believe. So you have to be able to understand that the universe is always with you, and it's within you, it's all around you, it's everything, and that's never going to leave your side. God, the higher power that you have faith in, whatever it is, whatever religion you believe in, it doesn't matter. It's it's always there, and that's the only thing that's always going to be there. Even if you're not there for yourself, you have to trust that God can be there for you, and and trust that you can let your guard down sometimes and relax. You know, like if I don't know, not everyone has a childhood where they're able to feel this, but ideally, if you have a childhood and you have a moment that you can remember where you just trusted your guardian, your parent, to plan out your day for you and to take care of all the hard work, all the adult conversations that you didn't understand, that you weren't a part of. You just got to be a kid and relax and enjoy that while they took care of the hard stuff for you, and you could just enjoy your day. And you have to trust that even though as you get older you are responsible for a lot more, you have to trust that you're always going to be capable of being responsible for whatever you're responsible for, and that it's okay to take a break sometimes and let go, let God, which is what last week's video was about. But this week we're talking about relationships. So if you know that, it's kind of nice that I was able to talk about that, because it's sort of like the videos are flowing into each other. Like one topic leads to the next, and they're all connected. Everything is connected. But that's that God. That's the only being that's always going to be there for you. You can say, okay, I'm letting go. This is a moment where I just need to have faith and just not overwork myself. But that's it. Everyone else, everything else is unreliable. You can't have relationships with people and expect them to be perfect, expect them to always meet your needs and be who you want, because they're just as confused as you are. They're going through the human experience, which is primarily confusing and hard. And you can't expect too much of people, but you have to know when someone is genuinely trying versus when they're just learning to use people. And these are the people who aren't really grateful for when their parents are doing their work for them, but they more are entitled to it and they expect it, and then they learn to get people to do all their work for them, and then they never take responsibility for what they're responsible for, which is really coming from a place of fear. They don't believe that they can do it, otherwise they would, because it feels better to do it yourself. But clearly they've decided that it's better to have other people do it for them, which is just not acknowledging that, you know, we all have to give back what we take, and because we're all the same, we're all connected, and people don't acknowledge that, it's their funeral. They're going to have to deal with the consequences because they're just going to be left behind, and they're going to be alone because they're living with under the idea that they are alone, and that is how you end up alone in reality. You're already alone in your mind, so it doesn't matter if people are actually trying to be there for you and connect with you. You're not capable of having that deep of a connection when you think that way. So you're going to be alone, and you don't really want that. You just think you do because it's easier and you're afraid to do what's harder. And that's a shame. But you need to be able to see people like that and have empathy for them and say that, think like that must be really hard to deal with. But at the same time, it's not my job to baby them. It would be enabling them if I did if I tried to do their work for them. They need to learn to stand on their own, and I need to mind my own business and take care of myself and kind of live by example. And you can do that while still being kind to them and having empathy for them. You don't have to tell them off in some aggressive way and say, you need to grow up. You can always be kind to people and tell people what they need to hear in a kind way. And sometimes that is what they need, to feel like there is someone who genuinely cares about them and isn't just being aggressive. And then there's times where someone's just acting out and being ridiculous, and they really just need someone to just be really firm with them and just say, all right, cut the crap. That's enough. Don't, act your age. But there's a time and a place for both. You have to know what feels right for you, and know that whatever you choose, there's really no right or wrong, as long as you're proud of yourself, and as long as you're not kind of stooping to their level. Just, kind of focus on your own business, stay in your lane. But in regards to soulmates, I think that, let's see what I wrote here. You're always surrounded by love. Yeah, okay, so think about the support of the universe. That shows itself in many different ways. It could be people that are in your life, people that are trying to be there for you, and sometimes it's different people. Sometimes you move and situations change and there's different people surrounding you and supporting you. And sometimes it can be, I don't know what you believe in, but it could be like spirit guides or angels that are around you, but not always around you and not always the same. But, like through different lifetimes, you could have different guides with you. And even in the same lifetime, you could have one guide take over for a different role, watching over a different area of your life. All sorts of things are constantly changing. But no matter what changes, it's always true that you're always surrounded by support. And so, you don't have to believe in anything like that. I'm not trying to force anything on you. But either way, I need you to understand that you're never alone. You're never going at it alone, unless you believe that you are, and then you're kind of shutting everything out and you're making yourself alone. But you're doing it to yourself, and you can undo it just as easily. But I shouldn't say that because it's not easy, but it is possible, and it's worth doing, because what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do that's worth doing? So a soulmate is someone who you have opportunities to learn and grow with. Soulmates, based on my own belief, are people that you kind of have work contracts with. You basically said, all right, we're going to focus on doing A, B, and C in this life. And ideally the ones that are going to last a long time and be, less about work and more about just, kind of being together and evolving together. Those ones are usually where you have a lot of past life connection, like you've known each other for a really long time and it's familiar with that person. And in that case, you would know that. You would feel really comfortable and familiar with the person. There wouldn't be a lot of anxiety. But then there's also the soulmates where it's just kind of, it is supposed to happen, but it's more about work. Like you're learning something from that person, they're learning something from you, but it's eventually you're going to go in different directions. And that's okay. It's okay to do that. Even with a soulmate who is going to last a really long time, they still have free will. They can still choose not to do they don't have to do their part. They can always choose not to. And you have to know that it's okay to walk away or set whatever boundaries you need to set if that happens. And I don't like the idea of twin flames, or a soulmate that's lifelong. Like, in Christianity, there's this very strongly pushed idea of marriage, and you have to find your other half and stay together forever no matter what. It's a lifelong commitment. But what happens when you marry someone who just turns out to be an absolute piece of crap? What happens when you have a kid with that person? Are you supposed to stay together for the kid? Don't you think that putting a kid around that kind of toxicity when the parents aren't even comfortable around each other is going to be more chaotic than when the kid is with both parents and both parents are happy with other people? Maybe one parent is just blatantly toxic and the kid needs to get away from that parent, like, for good. There's all sorts of situations that happen, but you have to make sure that you're looking at it in a situational way. What is actually best for me in this situation? And what do I really want? And that's not to say that you're being selfish. Sometimes people are. Sometimes people are extremely inconsiderate and just impulsive, but that's not to say that you have to do anything. And you certainly shouldn't be staying in a relationship if it's turned sour. But a lot of religions will teach you that you should. You stay in that relationship, you try to make it work, you force it to make it work because you have to. You've made a promise, you've made a commitment, God has picked you two out, you're supposed to be together, or you're the same soul split in half into two bodies and you're meant to work with each other and find each other. All sorts of beliefs. And in spirituality, that shows itself in twin flames, and people are like, I found my twin flame, and you want to get a twin flame reading, and blah, blah, blah. And I think the idea that you're not whole on your own, that you need to wait for someone to make you complete, and you'll never be fully happy without this person, that is toxic in and of itself. And then the idea that you shouldn't leave them if they misuse their free will and they don't grow with you. What's going to happen if they get hit by a car? What do you do in these situations? Are you just supposed to be alone for the rest of your life? That's just not how life works, because life is always going to ebb and flow, and things are always going to change, like the same way that I talked about how you're always surrounded by love and it doesn't always look the same, like your guides and angels and everything. You have different, you and God are the only ones that are always going to be together. Through every lifetime, every incarnation, every form that you take, it's always going to be you and the universe. And that's the only thing that will be unchanging. Everything else is temporary. Everything. So when you keep that in mind, it's a lot easier to just acknowledge, this is where I am right now, this is what I want right now, and this is what's best right now. And you can carry empathy with you through that and make sure that you're making your decisions based on what you genuinely want and what's best for you and the people that you love. And just don't let fear creep in. Don't let guilt or shame creep into your decision making, because I think a lot of religions use shame and guilt to control people, and I don't like that. I think people need to be able to live on their own and not live underneath some authority that's trying to get them in line. So yeah, I love arguing about this stuff though, because I always find it interesting when people disagree with me. It's like, oh, okay, you see things differently. That's interesting. I want to know why. What do you know that I don't know? And often what they tell me is nothing that I haven't heard before. And, I do learn from arguments. I get new information, but it usually doesn't change my way of thinking. It just kind of adds to it, which I think is a good way to listen to people, is to just let it change the way that you see things rather than fully change your mind, just like, oh, okay, let's apply this to what I already know, instead of, oh no, I have to erase my whole worldview just because one person shared a new bit of information. But I'm always open to that too. Sometimes I see information and I'm like, whoa, this changes everything. And then I think about it further and I'm like, oh, actually, it doesn't change everything. And then sometimes it's, oh, actually, this isn't even true. But if it was true, it would change everything. So there's situations like that. You just have to keep in mind that not everything you see is true, and not everything has to be black and white. So, you come into the world, like I said, you don't know anything, you don't know what you even are, but you still have a bunch of people running around who, remember, are just as confused as you. They all came into the world with the same circumstances as you, just where am I, what is this, and who am I, and what am I? And yet they grew up and they learned some things just from the other people and from all the other stuff that's around here, none of which they created. It's all just, we just use materials that we found on the earth. We didn't bring things into existence. We didn't even go to outer space to get this stuff. Everything we've made, everything we've created came from the earth. So nothing is really ours. And yet we all want to arrogantly preach to each other about what's true and what's not true, and here's the right way to live and the wrong way to live. And we never really stop to say, who are you to tell me this? How do you know this is true? People who believe in their religions, it's such a strong and unwavering faith that there's really no way to be logical with them, because in their mind, the religion that they believe in is the truth, and there's literally nothing you could say to change their minds. They're not even open to the possibility that they're wrong. So there's just nothing that you can do about it. Like, they're just gone. They're in their own world. But it's a world that was man-made. It was created by people. And there's no way to disprove that. There's no way to prove that any specific religion is 100% truth and that you should absolutely live your life by it and put your faith into it. And if you can't prove that, then why would you do that? That seems like an extremely aggressive jump to make. But people do it, and it causes a lot of arguments and controversy, and it destroys relationships. But I think if you focus on the three things that I talked about in the first 3 episodes, philosophy, politics, and psychology, you can kind of break down those walls and focus on what's actually important, and then the truth will kind of follow. So once you focus on the psychology of it, because oftentimes when people have religious arguments, there is some psychological root behind it, some reason that they're there that they don't really acknowledge, and they need to go inward a little bit. And then there's the politics and the systems that we've created, and what's right and wrong. And then just philosophy itself, just thinking about, what is all of this and why is all of this? These things are all connected, and they're all really important. And you have to be able to think about these things regardless of your religion, regardless of what you already have faith in. Whether it's atheism, I think atheism is a faith. I think that if you can't prove that this stuff isn't real, then believing it isn't real is still just a belief. So, like a lot of people, I've looked up, like, is there proof against paranormal activity or anything? And all I get is proof of paranormal activity. I'm like, no, I'm looking for proof against it, not proof of it. And I literally can't find anything. So it's crazy to me that some people are like, oh, ghosts aren't real and you're crazy for believing in that. It's against science. And I'm like, where? Please, I've been searching. Show me. If you found something in science that actually disproves paranormal activity or anything like that as a possibility, please show me, because I can't find it. And anything I find actually just proves it. There's a lot more evidence for it than there is against it. And it's a little fishy to me that people are so intent on immediately shutting it down. I feel like there is some probably political reason behind that. And I've talked about that before on this channel, the reason for it. But I don't know. I'm getting off topic, but I already covered the topic, so I guess there's nothing else to say. If you want more information on what I was just talking about, though, there's a video that explains it better than I could, called The War on Intuition, and you can find that in a playlist that I have called Ivy Rivera Free Mini Classes, and that one like just really covers it really well what I'm talking about. You don't have to watch anything I recommend. It's totally up to you. But like I don't want you to think that I'm pushing anything on you or I'm promoting anything. But it's just if you're interested, that video will explain what I'm talking about. And just my channel, playlists, Ivy Rivera for mini classes, more on intuition. And there's also a part 2 to it if you want more. And they're both really interesting. I love all of those videos in that playlist. I've seen everyone at least once, I think, but some of them are worth watching more than once because they're interesting. And if you go back to it later and you see it with new eyes, you hear it with new ears, it still seems different. And it's not because the content has changed, but you've changed. So you're looking at it in a different way, and you're kind of applying it to the way that you see things now. So it's always worth going back and watching something twice. That's why people can watch the same movie twice. You know, if you were watching it and it was the exact same experience as the first time every time, there'd be no point. But yeah, so anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. And if you have any questions, my comment section is always open. Bloopity doop.